Hi, I'm Carolyn Cole from the Eastern Shoveltown Cultural District, and I'm here again with another talented local artist and with the Artist on Display program at ECAT. This piece here we're going to start with won third prize in the Legacy Art Show, the juried Legacy Art Show that was held on June 28th. So I want to welcome the artist, Gwyn Marathis.
Hi, Carolyn. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Now this piece, and Gwyn is a person of many talents, painting, photography, and this is called fiber art. And this is a very, very intricate tapestry.
Fiberglass, excuse me.
Fiberglass piece. And Gwyn, if you can kind of tell us the process involved, because I know it's very intricate to have this accomplished.
Okay, well, this piece was inspired by a small acrylic painting that I did. The painting itself is only about this big. And I was in between projects, and I would stare at the painting and just wonder. I started wondering about the connection between that painting and what would happen if I blew it up really big, because one of my passions is jacquard design. I used to work in the textile industry as a jacquard designer, and so I was really missing it because, as you know, a lot of the industry went overseas in the early 2000s. And so I started thinking, I wonder what would happen if I scanned this acrylic painting into my scanner and had it find a commissioned weaving mill that could weave this for me on the industrial jacquard loom. And what would happen? What would it look like? What could I do with it from there? So that's what I did. I sent it out to be woven, and what came back was the equivalent of an underpainting. So, which is exactly what it is. It's just it's your first coat, and then you build on it from there. And in my case, rather than using paints, I used fiber. I used all types of fiber as a painting medium, just as I would use paint. And so I felted in some areas. This area here is felted. Needle felted, I should say, because I would take a special needle that has barbs on it, and I would just literally sit there and tap into the fiber. I mean, into the fabric with the fibers. And I also used a lot of freestyle embroidery. My mother taught me to embroider traditionally, but so I learned all the rules. But I'm a big fan of learning the rules and then immediately breaking them. So I like to do that. So that's what a lot of this is. And what I did was, what my goal was to bring in bright colors, because the colors were very subdued at first. So all of this in here, these really bright colors are what I had to bring back in. And in some cases, I had to cut fibers away. I had to cut it's woven on a tapestry. It's hard to describe it, but it's woven using a lot of different colored threads. So how the loom works is it will pull up certain threads at a time. So you might want to use just yellow and red. So those will come up, the rest will stay on the bottom, and then everything is woven in. That's a simplistic way of putting it, but that's basically what they do. And in fact, when you turn it over, you can see the reverse shows you the other ones that sunk to the bottom. So that's like the negative. It'd be like a negative for a photograph. So in places like here and up in here, I wanted the yellow to show. So I'd sit and physically cut out the red. And that's pretty much, and it took me about 2 or 3 months, about 3 months to finish this. And I had a lot of fun with it, and I enjoyed doing it. And I've got another one in process now. So.
And the piece is called Fiberglass.
The piece is called Fiberglass.
It's a great display piece for any entry wall.
Yes.
It's
It's about 4 feet by 6 feet. Yeah, it's meant as a wall tapestry. It has the hangers built into it, and it's freeform, so it's not meant to be absolutely flat. That's one of the things I love about fiber as well, is it's very organic and tactile. That you just want to touch it. So that's pretty much it.
Great. We're starting with one of Gwyn's digital prints, and which I understand is the basis for doing a jacquard
Yes,
piece.
yes.
So we have several pieces you'll see on the walls. Can you explain to us what is what?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to explain that when it comes to jacquard weaving and the jacquard weaving loom, it's based on the binary system, and it was invented by a Frenchman named Jacquard, appropriately, and it's credited for being the forerunner of the computer because it acts on the same open and closed system, 0 and 1 that computers do nowadays, and that's been a fascinating point for me. So it's not a far, when you know that, it's not a far stretch to realize that you can take a digital image, the pixels, and translate that into woven products, and that's exactly what they do nowadays. So when I'm designing for the loom, what I would do is I start with an image such as this. This is, I've been doing digital pattern designs in repeat, which means they repeat over and over again. So if you're familiar with wallpaper, when you put that up, you have to position it just right. It's the same idea with designs on fabric. And so I create these on the computer, and I'm affiliated with a print studio in London, and they sell them to the textile industry. And this is one example of one repeat of one of my designs. So I would take this and send it to a mill and say, I'd like to have this woven. In some cases I would have to pick out the colors, but this would be very intricate. But the jacquard can handle it because they have so many different, every single string can come up individually rather than looms such as I'm going to show you on this side that have harnesses. So it's a series of strings that come up.
Okay.
This type of a loom, it can just bring one thread up if it wants to. And that's, in this case, this was one that came from a painting. I started with a painting, and I had to clean it, put it into repeat, kind of like the wallpaper again, and this was woven for pillows, for the upholstery industry, for pillows. And in this case, I only used 2 colors, so it's not as multicolor. I just used the blue and the white, and I think in this case there's some black in the background just to give it that little pop. So this is an example of one that would go onto furniture.
Right.
This is another example of my embellished jacquard. This is a photograph of this is from a photograph of my Japanese maple in the backyard. And so I just started playing with that. I took one, this is another one that I had sent to a commissioned weaving mill, and I had a whole bunch together, and they sent me back yardage, and from there I was able to, I would cut them up into smaller pieces, and so there were a series of paintings from this.
And this is beautiful.
And
it
this
matches so many different things. There's so many different colors
Thank
that
you,
you have
yeah.
to be right on top of it to see it. But the violets and
Right.
it's beautiful.
What I tried to do is once I have the photograph translated into the fabric, I try to put the photograph away because I'm trying to get away from it just looking like a low resolution photograph on a piece of fabric. So in some cases I do start with the photograph to kind of get the darks and the lights, because once again this comes to me as an underpainting. So, but then from there I just kind of let my imagination go wild. I really let my imagination go wild with the one out front. This one, it was on a smaller scale, and it just didn't feel right to go too crazy with it, introducing other colors than what were there, because it's really kind of stood on its own too.
Yes,
that was kind of a tough one to decide. That's always the hardest part with being an artist or a fiber artist, is it's hard to decide when it's done. It's really hard. You have to, I call it, I have to deem it done. That's it.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of discipline that goes with
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Because I can look at it now and still say, oh, you know, maybe I should do this to it, maybe, you know, that type of thing. So, but I do not. It's done.
We're seeing things that are totally different, as well as a really
Yes.
adorable
My little
painting of your cat in acrylics. And is that something that you do? You like to paint animals?
Yes, yes. That's one of my newest hobby endeavors. As I balance creating artwork with trying to earn a living, and so I started just as a fluke doing a pet portrait for someone, and everyone loved it. So I have a website, portraitsbygwen.com, that people can go to, and they can see examples of my work. And if anyone's interested, I do pastels or acrylics of predominantly pets. I can do people too, but I've tended to gravitate to the animals lately because, of course, people, they feel funny about their own faces, but they love their animals' faces.
Exactly,
And now
exactly.
animals are their babies. So this one right here is really fun. This was my cat, Gigi, and it's done on a 4x4 little canvas. So those are fun, little tiny ones. So you just
Yeah.
have this little jewel in your home, and so that's been fun for me recently. And it's a nice break from the weaving, because weaving
Right.
can get very mechanical, very technical, but it's very much like meditation. And
Right.
and then to go back to my roots are in painting, because I was a child of a artist family, so I grew up with oil paints and acrylics as time went on, and so that's definitely my world. So then as I became an adult, I got into the weaving, and I love the weaving part. This right here, this piece, is just a narrow scroll type. I think of it as a scroll, kind of rolling up through the scroll. I call it pagoda. And this is a Japanese creative, it's really called clasped weft tapestry technique. And the Japanese refer to it as seori, which is you can look that up. It's a whole interesting movement to bring people into weaving, and of all people into weaving, whether or not they have with the premise that everyone can weave and it's good for everyone. And they're even working with people that are physically challenged, and it's just a wonderful program. And so I got involved with Seori Worcester. And so that's where I was taught to employ these techniques. And in this case, I was working with Japanese specialty yarns, which I really loved doing. There's a place in New York City called Habu, where they bring in all these really crazy, some of them are really crazy yarns. I'm trying to see where it is.
Very fine. They have
Very
a lot of fine
fine.
texture to
Some of them have metal down here. These are made with metal in the middle. This yarn right here is paper. And I'm trying to find, this one's with like a, not a coconut stalk, but something like that. I can't remember offhand exactly what it's called. But and then down somewhere in here, or maybe I didn't use it. I did have a yarn that was made with fishing nets. They would cut up the fishing nets, and so you get these little spikes coming off of it. But I always thought I used it in here, but I guess I did not. But anyway, so it shows and I love the colors of it, the subtle colors. And this was this edition here was a pin. A friend of mine was taking metalsmithing classes, and she showed me how to make the copper pins with the beads. So
Yeah.
I do everything. And then this piece right here, because I have such a passion for weaving, a love for weaving, I wanted to show people what an actual weave looks like in a way that would be aesthetically pleasing and not quite as maybe as dry and boring as sometimes weaving can get. So this here is a twill weave, and it's basically the weave that's in everybody's jeans.
Ah.
So if you think about your blue jeans, that's how that fabric is created. And it gives you a little bit of a stretch, but not enough, and that's why they came up with spandex. So
Thank God for
but,
spandex.
yeah, thank goodness for spandex, that's for sure. And then this last piece is one that I did on a 4-harness loom. This was done on a 2-harness loom, which is the simplest harness loom that you can get. Jacquard can pull up strings individually. This one pulls up every other one on the warp. So this is considered a very simple weave, and this is I have a little, what's called a Seori loom, and it's my favorite loom. So I went from 4,800 ends, or a really incredibly complex design process and mechanical process, to the simplest, way back to backstrap loom weaving and way back. And so then this one here is done on 4 harnesses, which means 1 string comes up, 3 stay down, and then another one comes up. So you have more opportunity to bring in patterns, where this one just does what's called plain weave. So
Right.
I'm trying to think, if you just think of your sheets, those are plain weave. And this one, I was curious to see what would happen when I used the clasp weft tapestry techniques on this pattern that was on the loom is called an overshot pattern. So if you think of country coverlets, the black and not black and white, blue and white usually you see, They have little like diamond designs and circle designs. If you've been to Sturbridge Village or somewhere like that, those covers were called overshot, the patterns on them. And so I was wondering what would happen if I used this technique on multiple harnesses and just played with it. So a lot of this is just plain. And I was really happy with the way it came out. And a lot of this is I usually work very intuitively. Like I said, I love to take the rules and break them and just kind of go with them. And that's what I did with this. And you can see, like right in here, I used a plain weave. So you can really see the difference of the look that you get.
And I like the introduction of the more camel type color.
Yeah.
On
yeah.
top of the blue. It kind of
Yeah.
makes it more interesting.
Yeah, they work side by side. I only weave this color to here, and then I interlace it, kind of like hook it around like that, with this color here. And that's how it works. And it's just where you start and stop as to where, like in this case here, I use this yellow. So you can see, and then it changes on the back to the opposite. But once again, you usually get the opposite on the back.
Yeah.
So you get a whole kind of different look. And then in this case, I would use 3 different colors. So this is more tricky to put these in the middle because you're working with multiple yarns, but they just come into the middle and I can create squares or circles or organic shapes.
Now,
So
let's go on to this other woven piece here. which
okay,
is
this is
very interesting.
again, this is an example of a plain weave, chenille. Excuse me, no, it's not chenille. It's it looks like chenille because the way
It looks very soft.
right, and it's kind of, so I guess it's a fiber art trompe l'oeil, I guess you could say, because I used variegated yarns throughout. Everything is, the yarn itself is all, it changes colors. It goes along, goes from greens and kind of pinks into the reds, and that's what you're seeing there. And then I took a very bright, thinner yarn, all very bright colors, almost neon colors, and just, once again, it's the clasp weft technique, because I really, as you can tell, I really enjoy that because it allows for a lot of creativity. And so that's what that piece is here. And this is a small table runner. It would be used as an accent piece. I do those as well for sale. I will do smaller pieces. I do commissioned work, and I also have an Etsy shop that from time to time when I stock it, I put these up, just smaller pieces. They might be a foot by a foot, they might be 15 by 10, and I sell them in most cases for less than $20. So those are
And
pretty
those
popular.
are pieces that are easy to integrate into someone's home.
Yes, that's what I like about that. You can put it with a plant, you can put it, on your sideboard, or if you just need a pop of color that's not too big. And of course, being less than $20, people, they'll take a chance on that. Whereas my larger pieces, they can get very expensive because they're time consuming. There's a lot of time involved, and besides the creative time, there's physical time.
Now we have this on the wall. So
Okay.
Can you explain this? This is another woven piece.
This piece here, I wove using the clasp weft technique to here, and then I rolled the yarns off the loom, so I had a whole bunch of strings, and I cut it and I put it aside. Then I tied on, you have to tie all the strings back on the loom, tied them back on, and before I wove this part, I wove all of these pieces from here onto this at a 90-degree angle. And then I wove the rest of this scarf, which creates this great, you can just drape it right around your shoulders. It's really nice.
It's beautiful because the colors, there's so many colors here.
Yeah.
That it's a piece that you can wear over and
Oh,
over
yes.
and over again.
Yes.
It picks up everything.
Yes, and I do those in widths up to about 20 inches, and I have done those, a couple of those for sale.
And now I
And-
noticed you have a little painting. Is that
Yes.
a painting or digital photography?
This is another digital painting, digital textile design. It's another design. What's going on in the textile industry is that the cost and technology for printing digitally on fabric the cost has come so far down that you're going to see more and more and more of your fabrics printed digitally, just using like a big giant paper printer. And what they can do is they can use dyes that aren't quite as harmful to the environment, because the traditional printing industry and dyeing industry, as I'm sure people are pretty well aware, can be pretty toxic. So this enables, not only does it enable them to be a little bit more green as we go forward, it enables the patterns to become incredibly complex. So that's why you will see photographs on fabric. You probably have seen dresses where you might see trees coming up the front or big giant flowers. They wouldn't be possible with the rotary printing, which is just, it's like silk screening, but only it's on a roll. And so they take one color and then another color and then another color. So it's an involved process. This is all at once. So,
so the customer has an ability to enjoy really much more creative fabrics and clothing and in furniture than we would have like 30 years ago.
Right. And then
makes a difference.
You can add, because, and the big difference is as we go forward, you're going to be able to create your own. People are going to be able to decide what they want to put on their clothes or what they want to put in your homes. So it's already started. There are places where you can design your own wallpaper, and they will print it for you. Clothing, yardage. I could take this and have it printed either on silk or cotton. So it's really changed. The industry has really, really changed.
It's amazing.
So it is, and it's a lot of fun. So.
And we have another piece.
We have another piece here.
That I like because it's like almost.
Yeah.
You can touch it. It comes forward.
Yes, this one is another one of my embellished tapestries in the series with the red leaves. The one that I do with the red leaves. I have a fascination for lichen. I love the way it looks on rocks and trees, and so I tend to go out in my backyard. That's one of my practices. I just go out in my backyard and just start taking pictures of interesting things. For example, the other day I have a pumpkin patch, and I became fascinated with the tendrils that come off of them. And I think I took about 75 pictures just of these, trying to get close-ups, and that's not easy green on green. I'm finding that out. So these were taken on a tree in my backyard, obviously. And it was interesting because intermixed with the lichen and the bark was these little tufts of moss. And so I really had fun with that one. That one I was able to.
It really looks like you're touching a tree.
Yeah, and this is a rug technique. These here, more of a kind of a rug technique. This one doesn't have the felted on it. When it's smaller like this, I can really basically get up at close and personal and just kind of sit with it on my lap and really play with it in a little bit more intimate way than I could with a big giant one. But they're all different, so I like that.
Well, I saved the jacket for last.
Okay, the jacket.
I think this is absolutely amazing.
Okay, this was a jacket that started with a painted warp, which means before I even wove it, I spread it out on a table, and I would take foam brushes and dyes, and it would be white, the fabric's white, and I would just paint. I mean, you can paint a picture, you can just kind of paint on it just to create a texture and a pattern. Then I let it dry and got it ready to put it on the loom, and then obviously wove it. And you can kind of really see in through here the dyes through it, you know, the colors, how the color changes. And this is cotton. This is all basically cotton. Once again, as I wove it, I used my favorite clasp weft technique. And this was all done in plain weave. And then I ended up with this huge, long piece of fabric, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. And so I just decided one day, well, you know, I could use a jacket for some show or something. So I took it and started cutting it out. So it's all free form. There was no pattern. I just kind of said, well, it might be interesting. So actually, it's actually more of a shrug than a jacket, unless you're really tiny. If somebody's really, really, maybe it is. But and then I embellished it. I didn't have enough. Let's see if I can take it off. I didn't have enough of the fabric wasn't long enough, so I started adding in crochet techniques. So it's crocheted, and of course I love the fringe, you know. and beads. So I threw in some beads, anything to make it visually appealing. So, and this was a lot of fun to do. This one, that came to be, once I decided what to do with it, it came together pretty quickly. So, and that was, and the painted warps always make it fun. And color, love color. Color is one of my passions as well. So that really showed, kind of put everything together. So
Well,
that's
Gwen,
that.
thank you so much for being here. We learned a lot, as well as enjoying
Good.
your beautiful artwork.
Good.
And I hope people will get in touch with you and
Yeah.
commission some of these
Yep.
pieces.
Yep. My website is wovenpaint.com. All one word, wovenpaint.com. You can see my work there. And also you can get in touch with me if you're interested in any type of weaving or even pet portraits.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gwen,
Thank
again.
you.
And thank Eastern Community Access Television for hosting us.